Eli stared at the stars from the observation deck of the colony's research station. The galaxy stretched out before him, endless and mysterious, a canvas of sparkling lights. He had always been fascinated by what lay beyond the edges of the Terran system. While other children played holosims or practiced sports, Eli spent hours studying the movements of distant planets, tracking the strange signals his parents' team sometimes received. He wanted to know everything about the universe, even the things humans were told to fear. Eli's parents, Dr. Mara and Dr. Nolan Vire, were respected scientists. They studied alien life forms in uncharted regions of space, often sending drones and probes to dangerous planets. Eli admired them, but he also wished he could explore more freely. He had grown up around alien samples, listening to stories of strange creatures and distant civilizations. The galaxy was dangerous, but to Eli it was beautiful. That morning, the sky over the colony shimmered with a rare cosmic event, a cluster of meteors passing near the research station. Eli's parents had prepared a small shuttle to observe the event up close. "Stay safe," Mara said, brushing Eli's messy brown hair back. Nolan adjusted the straps of his gear and smiled at his son. "We'll be back before you finish breakfast, Eli. Keep the station tidy." Eli waved, trying to hide his worry. His parents were brave explorers, but sometimes danger found even the most careful. The shuttle lifted off, leaving Eli alone in the large metallic halls of the research station. He wandered to the viewing bay, staring as the meteors streaked across space like silver arrows. Hours passed. Eli's eyes grew heavy, but he refused to sleep. Then a strange signal pinged across the station monitors. It was faint, unusual, a pattern Eli had never seen before. His curiosity piqued. He remembered his father saying that unknown signals often led to discovery. He grabbed a small scanner and followed the signal to the edge of the asteroid belt near the colony. The asteroids were massive, jagged rocks drifting slowly through space, shadows and light creating a shifting, dangerous maze. Eli guided a small personal pod, maneuvering carefully. The signal grew stronger, leading him to a large, dark asteroid with strange markings on its surface. He felt a chill. "What are you hiding?" he whispered. Suddenly, the pod's alarm blared. Something moved in the shadows, a fast, sharp shape almost invisible in the asteroid's cracks. Eli's heart raced. The creatures were scavengers, dangerous predators that hunted anything small and weak. He remembered his parents' advice. "If you're cornered, stay calm. Think." The first scavenger lunged. Eli dodged, rolling the pod to the side. The creature's claws scraped the metal, sparks flying. Eli activated the pod's small defensive shield, but there were too many. They surrounded him, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Panic surged, but Eli forced himself to breathe. He scanned the area, looking for an escape route. Then he saw it. A massive shadow moved behind the scavengers. Eli froze. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Huge, muscular, with scales that reflected faint light and eyes that glowed a deep, intelligent amber. It was the creature everyone in the galaxy feared, the one called Kryn. Stories described it as a predator that could tear through entire fleets, a being so deadly that most species avoided it completely. And yet, it stood quietly behind the scavengers, watching. Eli's mind raced. He could run, but the asteroid's maze offered few options. The scavengers hissed, ready to attack again. Kryn shifted slightly, and the scavengers froze, sensing the presence of something far more powerful. Eli's fear was mixed with awe. He had read about Kryn in old galactic reports, but seeing it in person was different. It was terrifying, yet majestic, almost regal. Slowly, Eli took a step forward. "I'm not your enemy," he said, his voice trembling. He didn't know if Kryn could understand him, but it was worth a try. The creature tilted its massive head, studying him. Eli noticed something strange. Kryn's eyes were curious, not aggressive. It made no move to attack him. Minutes felt like hours. Eli remembered his father's lessons. Survival depended on understanding, not just strength. He extended his hand slightly, showing he meant no harm. The scavengers, sensing Kryn's dominance, fled into the asteroid shadows. Eli exhaled, relief washing over him. Kryn moved closer, each step shaking the metal floor beneath Eli's pod. Eli could feel the raw power in every movement, yet the creature stopped just short of reaching him. It sniffed the air, its amber eyes scanning Eli's small frame. Eli realized that Kryn wasn't just curious, it was assessing him, deciding if he was dangerous, edible, or interesting. For the next few hours, Eli remained still, speaking softly, showing gestures of peace. Kryn observed every movement, tilting its head, sniffing, even circling him once. Eli's fear slowly shifted to fascination. Here was a being that the galaxy called the deadliest alien, yet it allowed a small human boy to exist in its presence. Finally, Kryn lowered its massive head, bringing its nose close to Eli's pod. Eli held his breath. The creature exhaled a low, rumbling sound, almost like a purr. Eli laughed quietly. "You're not so scary, are you?" Kryn blinked slowly. It was a small gesture, but in alien body language it was significant. It meant acceptance, or at least tolerance. As the asteroid's shadows deepened, Eli knew he had to make a choice. He could return to the colony and report what he had seen, or he could stay and try to learn more about this incredible creature. His parents were missing, the galaxy was dangerous, and yet a spark of excitement lit within him. This was his chance to experience the unknown, to understand a being that no human had ever befriended. Eli adjusted his pod, preparing for a slow approach. He kept his movements calm, careful not to startle Kryn. Step by step he moved closer, and the massive alien did not retreat. Instead it allowed him near, observing him with intelligent amber eyes. Eli reached out slowly. I'm your friend," he said. The words sounded fragile, almost foolish in the vast emptiness of space, yet they carried hope. Kryn's head lowered even more, close enough that Eli could see the intricate patterns in its scales. It was beautiful, unlike anything in human experience. For a long moment they simply looked at each other, boy and beast, predator and prey, yet something unspoken connected them. Eli realized that the galaxy was full of dangers, but it was also full of possibilities. By the time the first faint light of the nearby star touched the asteroid belt, Eli had made a silent promise to Kryn. He would learn, adapt, and survive. And maybe, just maybe, he would find a way to become something more than a scared boy lost in space. He would become a friend, a companion, a family member, to the galaxy's deadliest alien. As Eli prepared to rest in the small pod for the first time that night, he felt a strange sense of peace. Kryn settled nearby, its massive body coiled like a living shadow, protective yet calm. Eli realized that despite the dangers that awaited, he was no longer entirely alone. The universe was vast, unknown, and frightening, but with Kryn at his side, he felt ready. The stars outside twinkled like distant eyes watching their first small human-alien bond. And for the first time in his young life, Eli understood that survival was not just about strength. It was about courage, intelligence, and the willingness to reach out to even the most fearsome beings. And somewhere deep within Kryn's amber eyes, there was recognition too. A recognition that this small, clever creature could be trusted, that perhaps in this boy there was a spark worth keeping alive. The galaxy was watching. The asteroid belt was silent except for the soft hum of Eli's pod. Outside, the massive form of Kryn moved gracefully among the shadows, its amber eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Eli could feel the creature's presence, powerful yet strangely calm. He had spent the night trying to understand Kryn, studying its movements, noting the way it listened and watched. By morning, Eli realized something important. Kryn wasn't just a predator. It had intelligence, awareness, even what seemed like patience. Most creatures acted on instinct alone. Kryn observed, analyzed, and decided before acting. Eli had learned this the hard way. When he first approached it, any sudden move could have been his last. But Kryn had allowed him near, and that choice meant something. Eli climbed out of his pod, stepping carefully on the rocky surface of the asteroid. His small feet barely made a sound, yet Kryn immediately turned its massive head toward him. Eli raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly. "I just want to understand you." For a long moment, Kryn remained still. Its tail swished slowly, brushing against the rock with a sound like rolling boulders. Then with a low rumble, it moved closer, sniffing the air around Eli. He held his breath. When it finally lowered its head near him, Eli could see the intricate patterns in its scales. They shimmered slightly under the dim light, a mix of deep blue, silver, and hints of green. Beautiful, terrifying, alive. Eli realized that if he wanted to survive, and maybe help Kryn too, he had to learn more about the creature. He remembered something his mother had said. Every species has a way of thinking, a way of communicating. If you can find it, you can build trust. He reached slowly into his pod and retrieved a small pack of nutrient cubes. Carefully, he set one down on the rock. Kryn's massive eyes followed every movement. The creature sniffed the cube, then picked it up with a claw-like limb, examining it. Slowly it ate. Eli exhaled. Small victories, he reminded himself, built trust. Over the next few days, Eli stayed close to Kryn. He observed how it moved, how it hunted small creatures for food, and how it responded to changes in the environment. He tried small gestures of communication, pointing, showing objects, using simple sounds. Kryn responded with subtle movements, tilting its head, changing the angle of its eyes, shifting closer or farther away. It became clear to Eli that Kryn understood more than he could express. It reacted to his intentions, not just his actions. When he approached carefully, it stayed calm. When he moved too fast, it flared its wings slightly, a warning. Eli realized that this was no ordinary alien. Kryn was clever, strategic, and powerful, a guardian in its own way. Eli's small pod became their base. He fixed the damaged panels with scraps he had on hand, creating a safe space for both him and Kryn. He crafted tools and devices from broken drone parts, thinking like an engineer, imagining how Kryn could move through the asteroid maze more easily. The boy and the creature began a silent partnership. Eli provided ideas, Kryn provided strength. One day, as Eli repaired a communication relay, the pod's alert system beeped frantically. A fleet of small, heavily armed ships was approaching. Eli froze. He recognized the markings of the Galactic Bounty Guild, a ruthless group that tracked dangerous beings for profit. Kryn growled, a deep rumbling sound that shook the asteroid. The creature had sensed them long before Eli's monitors could confirm their presence. "They're after you, aren't they?" Eli whispered, eyes wide. Kryn's tail lashed against the rock, a warning to both the boy and the incoming threat. Eli knew he had no weapons strong enough to fight ships like these, but he did have something they didn't. Kryn. He climbed into the pod and looked at Kryn. "We have to run. Stay close and trust me, okay?" Kryn tilted its head as if understanding the plan. Eli activated the pod's thrusters and they moved quickly through the asteroid field. The bounty ships followed, firing beams that ricocheted off the rocks. Eli's heart pounded, but he forced himself to focus. He remembered old simulations he had seen of asteroid navigation and used the narrow gaps to evade their attackers. Kryn moved alongside him, weaving through the rocks with immense speed and precision. Eli marveled at the creature's abilities. It was faster than anything he had seen, stronger than anything he had imagined, and yet it responded to his directions. Subtle gestures, tiny changes in the pod's path. Together, they were a team. Hours passed as they darted through the asteroid belt. The bounty hunters finally gave up, retreating with a final warning transmitted across the void. "We will return. No one escapes the guild." Eli exhaled in relief. Kryn nuzzled him lightly, a gesture Eli took as reassurance. For the first time since his parents disappeared, Eli felt a small spark of hope. He was no longer alone. He had Kryn, and together they could survive. But he also knew the universe would not be easy. The bounty hunters would return and more dangers lay ahead. He had to learn faster, think smarter, and adapt constantly. Over the next weeks, Eli and Kryn developed routines. Eli taught the creature small tricks, how to follow simple signals, how to use the pod for mobility, even how to recognize certain symbols he drew on panels. Kryn, in turn, taught Eli lessons that no human school could offer. How to move silently in rocky terrain, how to anticipate danger, how to conserve energy in hostile environments. Eli began to understand Kryn's mind in small ways. The creature was cautious, calculating, and highly protective. It valued survival but also seemed to appreciate intelligence and loyalty. Eli realized that Kryn's reputation as the galaxy's deadliest alien was not just because of strength. It was because it combined instinct, intelligence, and an almost strategic patience. Humans had cleverness. Kryn had power. Together they were formidable. One evening, as they rested on a small flat asteroid, Eli looked at Kryn and said quietly, "You don't have to be alone either, you know. I can be your friend, maybe even your family." Kryn tilted its head, eyes reflecting the starlight. For the first time, Eli thought he saw something like understanding or maybe even acceptance. Their bond grew stronger. Eli discovered that Kryn had subtle ways of showing trust, curling its massive body around the pod to shield him from debris, nudging him gently when it wanted attention, or simply remaining close during the cold asteroid nights. Eli realized that family was not only about blood, it was about trust, loyalty, and shared experiences. But danger was never far away. A sudden signal blared from the pod scanner, another bounty fleet, this time larger, more organized. Eli's pulse quickened. Kryn growled in low tones, flexing its claws. Eli knew that their survival depended on cleverness. Humans could not match the weapons of the galaxy, but they could outthink anyone, and Kryn could turn strategy into raw action. Eli quickly drew a plan on a small slate. They would use the asteroid field as a maze, drawing the bounty ships into narrow passages where their large ships could not follow. Kryn would provide cover, striking only when necessary, using its power to divert obstacles and create barriers. Eli checked his makeshift devices, readying energy nets and decoy signals. When the fleet arrived, Eli's plan went into action. Kryn moved with precision, knocking massive rocks into the path of pursuing ships while Eli activated decoys to mislead their sensors. The bounty hunters fired relentlessly, but they could not navigate the unpredictable terrain as quickly as the boy and the alien. One by one, the ships were forced to retreat. After the last ship vanished, Eli slumped against the pod wall, exhausted but exhilarated. Kryn lowered its head, nudging him softly. "We did it," Eli whispered. "Together." Kryn's rumble was low and steady, almost like a reply. Eli realized something profound. The galaxy was dangerous, full of hunters, predators, and unknown threats. But humans had something unique, the ability to think, adapt, and care. And when paired with a creature like Kryn, their strengths multiplied. He was no longer a boy lost in space. He was a partner, a strategist, and perhaps even a part of something larger, an unusual family that could survive anything. As the asteroid belt grew quiet under the distant starlight, Eli and Kryn rested side by side. The universe was vast and full of unknown dangers, but they had each other. And that, Eli thought, was the first step toward truly becoming something more than a survivor. The galaxy might call Kryn the deadliest alien, but Eli knew the truth. The deadliest things were not always weapons or claws, they were courage, intelligence, and the bonds that could form between the most unlikely of friends. And he was ready to prove it. Eli sat in the pilot seat of the pod, his fingers gripping the controls tightly. The asteroid belt had faded behind them, replaced by the vast emptiness of open space. Stars stretched endlessly, glittering like distant fires. But Eli's mind was not on the beauty of the galaxy. His thoughts were on the bounty hunters who would not give up so easily. The signal on his scanner flickered constantly, a warning that danger could strike at any moment. Kryn moved beside the pod, its massive form seeming almost too large for the small vessel. Yet somehow they had learned to coordinate. Eli adjusted the pod's course slightly, and Kryn followed the direction instinctively, weaving through the field of smaller asteroids and floating debris. Every movement was precise. Every decision mattered. Eli had learned quickly. Survival depended on both human cleverness and Kryn's raw power. The first stop on their journey was a small, forgotten space station orbiting a cold, gray planet. Eli had chosen it because no one visited it anymore. Its docking bays were broken, lights flickering, but it offered safety. They landed cautiously, Kryn stepping out first, its claws leaving deep marks on the metal floor. Eli followed, carrying a small pack of supplies he had gathered during their flight. The station was silent except for the echo of their footsteps. Eli moved carefully, exploring the long-abandoned halls. He found old energy cells and repaired the pod's communication system enough to send a short, encrypted message to the outer colonies, just in case his parents, or someone helpful, could respond. Kryn watched him constantly, its amber eyes alert for any threat. "I know you don't trust humans easily," Eli said quietly, "but we're on the same side now. You protect me, I protect you." Kryn tilted its head, a small rumble emanating from its chest. Eli took it as agreement. The days passed with small routines. Eli repaired and upgraded the pod using whatever resources he could scavenge, while Kryn patrolled the perimeter of the station, testing its strength and agility. The bond between them grew stronger. Kryn no longer viewed Eli as just another fragile creature in the galaxy. It had begun to treat him as a partner. Eli, in turn, had begun to understand Kryn's behaviors, learning to read its subtle movements and patterns. But peace was fragile in a galaxy like theirs. One morning, while Eli worked on a sensor array, the pod's warning lights flashed violently. Multiple ships approached from a nearby system. Bounty hunters. Eli's stomach tightened. These hunters were skilled, organized, and relentless. If they caught Kryn, it would mean death, not just for him but for the creature who had become his friend. "Ready, Kryn?" Eli whispered. The massive alien crouched slightly, muscles tensed, ready for movement. Eli activated the pod's thrusters, sending them rocketing into space. The bounty hunters pursued immediately, their weapons firing streams of light across the void. Eli dodged asteroids and used the debris of abandoned stations to confuse their scanners. Kryn moved with precision alongside him, its massive claws striking smaller debris into the path of the pursuing ships. Every step, every movement was synchronized. Eli realized they were no longer just a boy and a monster. They were a team, a unit that could outthink and outmaneuver their enemies. Hours passed as they weaved through asteroid fields, narrowly avoiding collisions and enemy fire. Eli's hands were sore from constant adjustments, but he felt exhilaration. He had never felt more alive. This was more than survival. It was a test of human ingenuity against impossible odds. And Kryn was the strongest ally he could imagine. They escaped the hunters temporarily, but Eli knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was full of dangers, and bounty hunters never forgot a target. He had to find a place to regroup to plan their next move. They headed toward a gas giant known for its thick, stormy atmosphere. It was dangerous, yes, but it offered camouflage. The pod's sensors would be obscured by the swirling gases, and Kryn could navigate through the storms with ease. As they entered the gas giant's orbit, Eli marveled at the power of nature. Lightning danced across the clouds and storms raged endlessly. The pod shook violently, but Kryn stabilized it with a careful swipe of its massive tail. "You're amazing," Eli said, smiling despite the tension. Kryn rumbled softly, a sound Eli had begun to recognize as approval. They spent several days hidden within the storms, using the cover to rest and repair. Eli continued to study Kryn, learning more about the alien's abilities. Kryn could sense vibrations in the atmosphere, detect energy signatures from miles away, and react with lightning-fast speed. Eli realized that pairing human ingenuity with alien power created possibilities that neither species could achieve alone. But even in hiding, the galaxy was relentless. A small scout ship penetrated the outer storm, scanning for their signatures. Eli quickly formulated a plan. Using the pod's limited energy resources and some of Kryn's natural abilities, they created false signals and decoys. The scout ship followed the decoys, leaving them untouched. Eli's heart swelled with pride. He had outsmarted them. "Again, you see, Kryn, humans can be clever," Eli said, brushing back his hair. Kryn nudged him gently as if agreeing. The bond between them had grown deeper. It was no longer just survival. They were learning from each other, adapting, becoming stronger together. Eli realized that his parents had taught him many things: curiosity, patience, and intelligence. But Kryn was teaching him lessons no human could: instinct, raw power, and the wisdom of experience. Together they were becoming something rare in the galaxy, a true partnership between species. One night, while resting in the pod, Eli looked out at the swirling storms of the gas giant below. "Do you ever wonder why we met?" he asked quietly. Kryn's eyes reflected the distant stars, and for a moment, Eli thought he saw something like understanding. Perhaps the universe had brought them together for a reason. The days turned into weeks as they traveled between star systems, always careful, always alert. Eli repaired the pod, scavenged resources, and learned navigation skills far beyond what most humans his age could imagine. Kryn remained his guardian, protector, and teacher. They became legends of a sort, unknown to most but growing in reputation among those who dared traverse the outer systems. Their journey was not just about survival. Eli began to see opportunities. They could explore unknown worlds, gather knowledge, and maybe even find his parents. The galaxy was vast, full of possibilities, and for the first time, Eli felt that he had a purpose beyond mere survival. Together with Kryn, he could do things no human alone could achieve. But the bounty hunters were patient. One day, Eli's scanner detected a massive fleet approaching from the edge of the system. This was no ordinary chase. They were prepared, armed with advanced weapons and experienced crews. Eli felt a surge of fear, but he refused to let it control him. He turned to Kryn. "We can't run forever. We have to fight smart. You ready?" Kryn's rumble was low and steady, a sound Eli had come to recognize as agreement. They formulated a plan, combining the pod's technology with Kryn's strength. Eli would use decoys, energy traps, and the environment itself, while Kryn would strike at critical points, using speed and power to turn the tide. It was risky, but it was their only chance. As the fleet closed in, Eli's mind worked faster than ever. Calculations, strategies, and contingencies flashed through his thoughts. He was no longer just a boy in space. He was a strategist, a commander, and a partner to the deadliest alien the galaxy had ever known. Kryn's claws glinted as it prepared to strike, and Eli's hands hovered over the controls, ready to execute their plan. The chase across stars had only just begun, but for Eli, every moment with Kryn was a lesson that humans could survive, adapt, and even flourish in a galaxy that demanded courage, intelligence, and heart. And that sometimes, the most unlikely friendships could become the strongest families. The horizon of the barren planet stretched like a gray, lifeless sea. Jagged rocks rose sharply from the surface, casting long, spindly shadows under the dim light of a distant sun. Eli's pod touched down with a soft tremor, the engines whining as they powered down. Kryn stepped out first, its massive claws leaving deep impressions in the dust. Eli followed, scanning the area. It was a perfect trap, or at least it could be if they used it wisely. "Stay close," Eli whispered to Kryn. "We can't fight them head-on. We'll need to be clever." Kryn's amber eyes reflected the determination in Eli's own. The massive alien crouched low, muscles coiled like springs. Every movement was silent, careful, deliberate. Eli checked his makeshift devices once more. Energy nets, decoy drones, and a few traps he had prepared from scavenged parts of old satellites. This was going to be the hardest challenge they had faced so far. The first ship appeared over the rocky ridge, its sensors sweeping the planet's surface. Eli felt a familiar twinge of fear but pushed it aside. Fear was not weakness, it was a signal, a guide. Using the pod's communication interface, he activated the decoys. Holographic images of their pod appeared scattered across the rocks, confusing the approaching ship's targeting systems. Kryn roared, a deep, vibrating sound that echoed across the barren plains. The fleet paused, scanning for the source. Eli used the distraction to guide the pod closer to a narrow canyon. "Now!" he shouted. Kryn sprinted ahead, moving like a shadow over the jagged rocks. Eli followed, guiding the pod with sharp, precise maneuvers. The bounty hunters fired relentlessly, beams of energy slicing the air, but the traps Eli had set slowed them. Large boulders toppled at Kryn's command, smashing into smaller ships, while decoy signals led the larger vessels into false targets. Every strike was calculated, every move deliberate. Eli's human ingenuity combined with Kryn's raw power created a force no single bounty hunter could match. One of the hunters tried to flank them, moving into a narrow passage to cut off their escape. Eli anticipated the move. He activated a hidden energy net that had been strung across the canyon walls. The hunter's ship collided with it, immobilized instantly. Kryn leaped onto the vehicle, its massive claws tearing through the reinforced metal. Sparks flew, illuminating the alien scales in shimmering colors. Eli marveled at the coordination. He had never thought a human and an alien could function so seamlessly as a team. Kryn's instincts, strength, and speed complemented his planning, his traps, and his knowledge of strategy. Together they were a force to be reckoned with. Hours passed in a blur of motion. The rocky landscape became a battlefield, alive with the sounds of energy blasts, crashing metal, and Kryn's powerful roars. Eli stayed focused, calculating trajectories, adjusting traps, and predicting the enemy's moves. Kryn moved with terrifying precision, striking at the right moment, protecting Eli from incoming attacks, and using the terrain as a weapon. At one point, a large hunter ship managed to break through their defenses. Eli's heart skipped a beat, its weapons locked on the pod, ready to fire. Thinking quickly, Eli activated a decoy signal, sending a false energy signature to the ship's sensors. Kryn charged, creating a diversion by knocking massive rocks into its path. The hunter fired, but its aim was thrown off and the blast barely missed them. Kryn then struck the ship with full force, sending it crashing into the canyon wall. Eli cheered quietly, but he knew the battle was not over. The final wave of bounty hunters approached, a formation of larger, heavily armed ships. Eli's mind raced. They couldn't defeat them with force alone. He needed to combine everything they had learned: strategy, deception, environment, and Kryn's unmatched power. He led Kryn into the heart of a canyon filled with jagged rocks and narrow passages. "Follow my lead," Eli said, voice firm. He activated the remaining energy traps and decoy drones, creating the illusion of multiple pods moving through the canyon. The bounty hunters, confident in their superior numbers, fell into the trap. One by one, their ships collided with rocks, energy nets, or each other. Kryn struck swiftly, using its strength to disable any ship that got too close. Eli felt a surge of pride and relief. They had turned the environment itself into a weapon. The bounty hunters were no match for the combination of human intellect and alien strength. After what felt like hours, the final ship fled, its crew defeated and humiliated. The canyon fell silent except for the heavy breathing of Kryn and the soft whirring of the pod systems. Eli slumped against the controls, exhausted but exhilarated. Kryn approached, its massive head lowering gently near him. Eli reached out, brushing against its scales. "We did it," he whispered. Kryn's rumble vibrated through the rocks, a sound Eli had come to understand as approval, respect, even friendship. For the first time, Eli allowed himself to smile. They had survived together using everything they had learned: strategy, intelligence, trust, and teamwork. Humans were often underestimated in the galaxy, seen as weak or fragile. But Eli knew the truth. Humanity's strength was in adaptability, creativity, and the courage to face impossible odds. And when paired with Kryn, they had become unstoppable. As they rested, Eli thought about his parents. He did not know where they were, but he felt a renewed determination. If he had survived this battle, if he had formed a bond with the deadliest alien in the galaxy, then perhaps he could find them. Perhaps he could bring them back into this strange, dangerous, but wondrous life he was now part of. Kryn's amber eyes scanned the horizon. Eli understood the look. It was awareness, readiness, and trust. The creature was not just a fighter. It was a guardian, a teacher, and now a companion. Eli realized that family could be found in unexpected places. Strength was not just in size or weapons, but in loyalty and trust. The barren planet, once a place of potential danger, now felt like a sanctuary. Eli set up a small camp, reinforcing the pod and creating lookout points. Kryn patrolled the perimeter, its movements silent but constant. Eli marveled at how quickly they had adapted to each other. Where a human might falter in fear, Kryn acted with precision. Where Kryn might act on instinct alone, Eli guided strategy and thought. Together, they were more than the sum of their parts. As night fell, the sky filled with stars. Eli sat outside the pod, looking at the vast expanse of space. Kryn settled nearby, its massive body coiled protectively around the small human. Eli felt a sense of peace he had never known. He had faced death, danger, and fear, and survived. Not alone, but with Kryn by his side. He whispered, "We're a team now, Kryn. Always." The creature rumbled in response, a soft, comforting sound that made Eli feel safe. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and full of unknowns, but for the first time he felt ready. Together they could face anything. The galaxy had called Kryn the deadliest alien. Eli had discovered that the true power of both humans and aliens did not lie only in strength or fear. It lay in courage, intelligence, and the bonds they could form with each other. He had become a strategist, a friend, and a family member to a being feared across star systems. The next challenge awaited. Eli and Kryn would need to travel further, explore deeper, and face new dangers. But the battle on the barren planet had proven something important. Together, human and alien could overcome anything. And the galaxy would remember them, not as prey and predator, but as partners. Eli leaned back, exhaustion weighing on him, but hope burning brightly. Kryn's protective presence reminded him that he was not alone. He had found family in the most unlikely place, and that bond would guide them through whatever the stars held next. The galaxy was vast, full of danger and wonder. But Eli, the Terran boy, and Kryn, the galaxy's deadliest alien, were ready to face it, together. Eli gazed at the stars from the pod as it glided through a quiet region of space. The battles and dangers of the past week still lingered in his mind. The bounty hunters, the traps, the chaos of the barren planet. But now, he felt a sense of calm. Kryn rested beside him, massive and protective, its amber eyes occasionally glinting with curiosity or awareness. The galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and often unforgiving, yet Eli knew something powerful. They were no longer alone. "Do you think we can really find them?" Eli asked softly, fingers brushing over the console controls. He meant his parents. Mara and Nolan Vire had disappeared into the unknown, and Eli had refused to give up hope. "Somewhere out there. They're alive, right?" Kryn rumbled, low and steady, a sound Eli had come to interpret as reassurance. The massive alien had become more than a guardian. It was his family. Its presence reminded him that courage, intelligence, and loyalty could be just as strong as any weapon in the galaxy. And with Kryn by his side, Eli felt that nothing was impossible. They traveled through star systems few humans had ever explored. Each planet, each station brought new lessons. Eli studied alien cultures, learned new languages, and used his knowledge to navigate threats and dangers. Kryn became his companion in every sense, scouting ahead, protecting him, and teaching him ways to survive in environments humans were never meant to endure. In one particularly quiet system, Eli discovered a small research outpost on a moon orbiting a ringed gas giant. It was abandoned, long forgotten, but its data logs contained fragments of signals that hinted at his parents' last known location. Excitement surged through him. "Kryn, this could be it. They might still be out there." The alien shifted its massive body closer, listening as Eli examined the logs. Together, they deciphered the coordinates. A distant system at the edge of known space, a place so remote that most humans would never dare venture there. Eli's heart raced. "We can do this, we have to. They're out there somewhere and we're going to find them." Kryn rumbled in agreement, as if acknowledging the mission ahead. Their journey was not easy. The path to the distant system was filled with asteroid fields, rogue meteor swarms, and unpredictable gravitational storms. Eli's skills were tested like never before. He calculated trajectories, adjusted energy shields, and used every trick he had learned to keep the pod and himself safe. Kryn, meanwhile, became a living force of protection. Its claws shredded debris in their path, its massive body shielded the pod from collisions, and its keen senses warned them of dangers Eli could not detect. During the long days of travel, Eli reflected on how much he had changed. He had once been a boy curious about the stars, unsure of his place in the galaxy. Now he was a strategist, an explorer, and a companion to a being the galaxy feared above all others. Humans were often underestimated, seen as fragile or weak. Yet Eli had proven to himself and to Kryn that courage, intelligence, and adaptability could overcome even the most impossible challenges. Finally, after weeks of careful travel, they arrived at the remote system. The planets glowed faintly under the light of a distant sun, and in orbit around a rocky blue-tinged world, Eli's sensors detected signs of activity. It was faint, almost hidden, a small research station barely functioning but enough to give hope. His pulse quickened. "This is it," he whispered. "We're close." Kryn nudged him gently, sensing his excitement. Together they approached the station carefully. Eli's heart pounded as he opened the airlock. The interior was dark and dusty, but the hum of life support systems still functioned. And then he heard it, a faint voice calling his name. "Eli, is that you?" His legs moved before his mind could catch up. "Mom, Dad?" he shouted. Mara and Nolan Vire stepped out from the shadows, older and wearied, but alive. Eli ran to them, throwing his arms around both parents. Tears streamed down his face. "I thought I'd lost you." Mara hugged him tightly. "We thought we lost you too," she said, voice trembling. "We've been trying to signal the colonies, but we never thought we'd find you like this." Nolan ruffled Eli's hair. "You've grown so much, Eli. You've survived something we could never have imagined." Kryn remained at the entrance, massive and silent. Eli stepped back slightly and gestured toward it. "Mom, Dad, this is Kryn. It's my family too." Mara's eyes widened as she took in the enormous alien. That's Kryn?" she whispered. Nolan studied it closely, noting the calm intelligence in its amber eyes. Kryn stepped forward, lowering its head slightly in a gesture of acknowledgement. It had protected Eli, guided him, and now, it seemed, it was willing to accept this reunion. Eli smiled, feeling a warmth that went beyond relief. His journey had not only reunited him with his parents, it had shown him what family could truly mean. It wasn't just about blood. It was about trust, loyalty, and the bonds forged through shared trials. Kryn had become part of that family, a guardian and companion unlike any other in the galaxy. Over the following days, Eli, his parents, and Kryn worked together to repair the station. Mara and Nolan were amazed at how much Eli had learned: navigation, engineering, survival skills, and even understanding Kryn's behavior. The boy they had once known had grown into a young leader, capable of facing the galaxy's most dangerous challenges. Eli taught his parents about Kryn's abilities, and they marveled at the bond he had formed. Humans and aliens, working together like this. It's incredible, Mara said. You've shown something important, Eli. That courage, intelligence, and empathy can bridge even the widest gaps in the galaxy. Kryn remained protective but calm, learning to coexist with Eli's parents. It allowed them to approach, observe, and even help with repairs, showing a level of trust that Eli had never expected from a creature of its reputation. The galaxy had feared Kryn as a predator, but here it was, part of a family, proving that strength and loyalty could coexist. Once the station was secure, Eli looked out at the stars again. The universe was still vast, still full of unknowns. There would always be dangers, challenges, and mysteries waiting in the dark. But Eli knew that with courage, intelligence, and the bonds he had forged with Kryn with his parents, he could face whatever came next. Ready to explore more? He asked Kryn. The alien rumbled softly, nudging him in affirmation. Eli grinned. Together they would travel farther, learn more, and show the galaxy what humans and their allies could achieve. In the days that followed, Eli, Kryn, and his parents set out on new missions. They helped stranded colonies, discovered hidden worlds, and prevented disasters that no single species could have managed alone. Humans' adaptability and cleverness shone brightly, while Kryn's power and intelligence allowed them to face threats few could survive. Together they became a symbol across star systems, a testament to what courage, loyalty, and family could achieve. Eli often thought back to the moment he first met Kryn, terrified and alone on the asteroid. He had learned that fear could be overcome with understanding, and that the galaxy's deadliest creatures could become allies when treated with respect and care. That lesson had carried him through every trial. One evening, as they orbited a small green world, Eli sat beside Kryn and whispered, "You're more than a guardian. You're family. The galaxy may call you deadly, but to me, you're everything." Kryn's rumble vibrated through the pod, a gentle affirmation. Eli smiled, feeling a sense of belonging deeper than he had ever known. The universe was vast and full of danger, but Eli had discovered something extraordinary. Humans could thrive, adapt, and even flourish no matter the odds. And sometimes the strongest bonds could form in the most unlikely places. A boy from Earth and the galaxy's deadliest alien. Together, they had become family. Together, they had become legends. And together, they would continue to explore, protect, and inspire the stars. The galaxy would never forget the Terran boy and his guardian, proving that courage, intelligence, and loyalty could turn even fear into friendship, and danger into a journey of discovery and hope. Eli leaned back, watching the stars swirl past. Kryn rested beside him, protective and calm. And for the first time, he felt certain of one thing. No matter what the galaxy threw at them, they would face it together, human and alien, friends, partners, and family. The stars stretched endlessly, but Eli knew that with Kryn at his side, the universe was a place of endless possibilities, waiting for their courage, their creativity, and their bond to shape it, and so their adventure continued into the unknown together as family of the galaxy.